I used to send $2,000 to my daughter every week so she could live well. Then I got 38 missed calls when I invited her for Christmas. I only needed to hear her voice to understand that my own flesh and blood had turned me into a stranger. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would tell. If you feel this story resonates with you, please leave a like and subscribe. Your support helps me keep sharing my thoughts. My name is Vivian Sterling. I am 68 years old, and I live in a small apartment in the Upper East Side neighborhood of New York City. From my window, I can see the hustle and bustle of Lexington Avenue where people rush to their jobs, their appointments, their full lives. I stay here between these four walls that smell of lavender and loneliness, waiting for a call that never comes. My routine is always the same. I wake up at 7 inches the morning, make coffee in the Italian stovetop espresso maker my late husband Charles gave me 30 years ago, and I sit in front of the phone. I wait, always waiting. The hours pass slow as molasses, marked only by the tick-tock of the wall clock I inherited from my mother, and the distant noises of the neighbors preparing to face another day. Until 3 months ago, my day began differently. I would wake up with a smile because I knew I had a purpose: to take care of my daughter Charlotte and my granddaughter Audrey. Every Tuesday, religiously, I would go to the corner bank, that Chase branch where the teller already knows me by heart, and transfer $2,000 to my daughter's account. $2,000 that represented almost my entire widow's pension, plus the savings Charles had left after a lifetime working as an electrician. Ms. Sterling, Maria the teller would say, "Are you sure you want to send that much money again?" And I, with my chest swelling with pride, would reply, "It's for my family, dear, so my granddaughter can have everything she needs." Charlotte always had a reason. "Mom, the washing machine broke down and we need a new one." "Mom, Audrey needs private English tutoring. It's super expensive, but it's her future." "Mom, we have to fix the car. We can't get to work without it." Every request came with that sweet voice that reminded me of the little girl who once ran around my kitchen stealing pieces of apple pie while I cooked. But there was something in her words that no longer sounded the same. A coldness that had been settling in over the years, like those leaks that start small and end up corroding the entire structure of the house. Her "I love you, Mom" sounded automatic, mechanical, as if she was saying it while thinking about something else. My apartment had become both my sanctuary and my prison. Every corner held memories of when we were a real family. On the living room shelf between my Danielle Steele novels and the oil-stained cookbooks, I have a framed photo of Charlotte on her graduation day. She wore that navy blue dress we chose together at the Macy's downtown, and her smile was so genuine it seemed to light up the whole photograph. Beside her, Charles hugged her with that paternal pride that makes fathers grow 2 inches taller. I was on the other side, my hair freshly done at the neighborhood salon, and my eyes shining with happiness. At what point did that young woman full of dreams turn into someone who saw me only as an ATM with feelings? The answer arrived on a Tuesday in November, as grey as all November Tuesdays in New York City. I had been preparing turkey and mashed potatoes, Charlotte's favorite dish, since she was little. thinking that maybe I could convince her to come for lunch with me that weekend. I hadn't seen her in 3 weeks, and the last time she came, she barely stayed 20 minutes. She sat on the edge of the couch as if she were in a hurry to escape, constantly checking her cell phone while I told her about my hip physical therapy exercises. I dialed her number with these arthritic fingers that no longer obey like they used to. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "What is it now?" "Mom?" Her voice was a sigh of exasperation, as if my call were an annoying interruption to her important day. "Hello, honey," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "How are you? How is Audrey?" "Fine." "Fine. Everything's fine." "What do you need?" That question cut through me like a knife. What did I need? I needed to hear that she loved me. I needed her to ask how I was doing, if I was sleeping well, if my medications were agreeing with me. I needed her to invite me for a casual dinner, to ask my advice about something, anything that would make me feel like I was still her mother and not just a source of funding. "Christmas is coming up," I said, my voice trembling. "I thought maybe you could come for dinner on Christmas Eve. I've been practicing that prime rib recipe your father loved so much." "And Mom," she interrupted me with that tone she used when Audrey misbehaved. "We've talked about this. We have our plans. Scott has family, too. You know, not everything revolves around you. Scott, her husband, the man who had won my daughter over with promises of a better life, smart investments in the tech market, and future plans that sounded so sophisticated I couldn't understand them. He worked in something related to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, or so he said, always dressed in expensive suits and talking about million-dollar deals that were about to take off. It would just be one dinner. "Honey, we could... Please. Mom, stop stressing me out." Her voice rose, taking on that harshness that chilled my blood. "Don't you understand? We're not kids anymore. We're living our life. You already lived yours. Why can't you get that?" I was silent, literally speechless. The phone weighed on my ear as if it were made of lead. The pot roast was still simmering in the kitchen, filling the apartment with that aroma of rosemary and vegetables that had always meant home, family, love. But now it just smelled like uselessness. I just wanted to spend some time with you all," I murmured. "I miss Audrey. I miss seeing you. I miss when we were... When we were what? Mom, when I didn't have my own life? When I depended on you for everything? That's over. Scott is right. You have to learn to live your life without focusing on ours." The click of the phone hanging up echoed in my ears like a door slamming shut. I stood there, receiver in hand, staring at the wall where the portrait of the Holy Family hung, which my mother had given me when I got married. Family is the most sacred thing there is, she had told me that day. Guard it as if it were the world's most precious treasure. How do you protect a treasure that no longer wants to be protected? How do you love someone who considers that love a burden? That night, as I stirred the pot roast that no one was going to eat, I realized I had been sending money every week for 5 years and had received exactly 2 visits that lasted more than an hour. 2 visits in 5 years. And on both occasions, the conversation had revolved around some urgent financial need that required my immediate help. The apartment felt smaller that night, as if the walls were closing in on me. In the silence, I could hear Mrs. Braid Goldberg next door watching television. The muffled sound of laughter from some entertainment program. Normal life. Normal people. Normal families who ate dinner together and talked about how their day had gone. I opened the drawer where I kept the bank statements. Sheet after sheet. Transfer after transfer. $2,000 every Tuesday for 5 years. I had sent over $500,000. Money I could have used to travel, to fix the leak in the bathroom, to buy new clothes, to live with dignity instead of surviving on the bare minimum. But it wasn't the money that hurt. It was the unsettled debt of love that had fallen into the red. What I didn't know was that this phone conversation would only be the beginning of my descent into hell. The next day, I decided to try again. Maybe Charlotte had a bad day at work. Maybe Scott had pressured her. Maybe she just needed time to reflect on what she had said. I dialed her number at 10:00 the morning when I knew Audrey would already be at school and she would have a moment of quiet. The phone rang and rang until it went to voicemail. Hello. You've reached Charlotte. Leave your message and I'll call you back when I can. Hello. Honey, I said upon hearing the beep. It's Mom. I just wanted to apologize if I bothered you yesterday. It wasn't my intention to pressure you. Call me when you have a minute. Okay. I love you. I waited all morning. Nothing. In the afternoon, I called again. This time, the phone barely rang twice before voicemail kicked in. She had deliberately rejected it. The message I left this time was shorter, more desperate. Charlotte, please call me. I just want to talk to you. On the 3rd day, I tried calling at different times. Early in the morning, voicemail. At lunchtime, voicemail. At night, voicemail. It was as if she had vanished from the planet, taking my granddaughter and any trace of the family I thought we had with her. I decided to try a different tactic. I sent her a text message with those trembling hands that no longer handled the cell phone. Charlotte had given me last year very well. Only for emergencies, she had said then, as if talking to her were a luxury I had to ration. Hello. My girl. I've been thinking about what we talked about. You're right. Maybe I was too pushy. I just miss my granddaughter. Could you send me a photo of her? I haven't known how she is in weeks. The message was marked as delivered, then as read. But no reply ever came. The days turned into a sickening obsession. I counted the missed calls as if they were beads on a digital rosary. 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, 20. Each unanswered call was a small death. One more confirmation that I had become a nuisance in my own daughter's life. Maria at the bank started noticing my state when I went in for the required weekly transfer. My hands trembled more than usual when signing the receipt. And I must have looked like I was attending a funeral because she asked if I was feeling well. Just a little tired. I lied. forcing a smile that must have looked more like a grimace of pain. "Is your daughter still with those prosperous businesses?" Maria asked while processing the transfer. $2,000 weekly. She must be making very good investments. Investments? The word echoed strangely. I had never thought of the money transfers as investments, but as acts of maternal love. But investment implies a return, doesn't it? And I had been investing for 5 years without receiving anything but indifference in return. Yes, I replied automatically. She's doing very well. But as I walked back home along Fifth Avenue, dodging tourists and office workers who seemed to have important destinations, I realized I had no idea what my daughter actually did for work. I only knew that Scott talked a lot about numbers and computers, financial markets, and golden opportunities that were always about to take off. He had mentioned something about mining bitcoins from home, about creating a family fortune that would secure the future for everyone, including me. When this takes off, Vivian, Scott had told me the last time I saw them, "You're going to be so proud you invested in us from the beginning. Your money is going to multiply by 10. But where were those gains? Why did they keep needing my $2,000 a week if the businesses were doing so well? Why did Charlotte never talk to me about Scott's successes? Only about the new needs that arose every week." On the 20th day, without news from her, I decided to do something I never thought I would. Go to their house unannounced. They lived in Beverly Hills, in a gated community of townhouses that cost more money than I had seen in my entire life. I took the subway to Union Station, and then a bus that took forever to reach its destination, winding through streets where the cars were worth more than my entire apartment. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Perfectly manicured lawn, brick facade, 2-car garage. A house that screamed financial success, prosperity, the life Scott had promised to give my daughter, a life I was unknowingly funding. I rang the doorbell with my heart pounding against my ribs like a caged bird. I heard footsteps approaching, the sound of locks being opened. The door cracked open, and Charlotte's face appeared. But not with the surprise I expected, but with something much worse, pure annoyance. "What are you doing here?" "Mom?" Not hello. Not what a surprise. Not a hug or even a smile. Just that question loaded with irritation, as if my presence at her doorstep were a territorial violation. "I wanted to see you," I said, feeling my voice sound small and pathetic. "You haven't answered my calls. And I told you I have my own plans for the holidays. Why can't you respect that?" Behind her, I could hear the television on sounds of a children's program that suggested Audrey was home. My granddaughter was right there, less than 15 feet from me, and I couldn't see her. "Is Audrey there?" I asked, trying to peek over Charlotte's shoulder. "I just want to say hello. It's been so long." "She's doing homework." She cut me off curtly. She can't be bothered. Bothered. As if a visit from her grandmother were a bother to an 8-year-old who used to run to hug me every time she saw me. "Charlotte, please. Just 5 minutes. You don't even have to invite me in. I just want to see her." "No, she's okay." My daughter sighed with that exasperation she reserved for the most irritating situations in her life. For a moment, I thought she would give in. that maternal instinct, or at least human decency, would make her reconsider. But instead, she took a step back and started to close the door. "Mom, you have to get over it. We're not kids anymore. We don't need you to focus on us all the time. It's overwhelming." Overwhelming, the word came out as a choked cry. "Sending you money every week is overwhelming. Worrying about you is overwhelming. It's not the money, Mom. It's everything else. The constant need for attention. To be a part of our life, too." "I am your mother," I exploded, surprising myself with the force of my voice. "I'm not asking for attention. I'm asking for love. I'm asking for a place in my granddaughter's life. I'm asking to be treated like family, not like a strange nuisance." Charlotte looked at me with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. For one terrible second, I didn't recognize the girl I had raised, the teenager I had supported through her identity crisis, the young woman who had cried in my arms when her first boyfriend left her for someone else. "Scott is right," she finally said. "You're pathetic, Mom. So pathetic." And she closed the door. I stood there on the entrance step of the house my dollars had helped pay for, looking at the varnished wood that separated me from my family. Through the living room windows, I could see the lights of the Christmas tree they had set up, golden ornaments shining with the warmth of a home that no longer included me. I walked to the bus stop as if I were in a trance. The ride back to New York City was a fog of contained tears and thoughts swirling like leaves in a whirlpool. When had I become someone who was pathetic? When had maternal love turned into an unbearable burden for my own daughter? That night, in the solitude of my apartment, I counted the missed calls once more. 38. 38 attempts to contact my daughter in 21 days. 38 small pleas for love that had fallen into the digital void of her indifference. The phone rang close to midnight, startling me from a light sleep full of nightmares where my granddaughter didn't remember my name. For a moment of irrational hope, I thought it might be Charlotte calling to apologize, to explain that she had had a bad day, that she hadn't meant to say those terrible things. But it was a number I didn't recognize. "Vivian Sterling," a male voice asked that sounded unfamiliar. "Yes, that's me." "Who is speaking?" "I am Detective Hayes from the NYPD. I'm calling in relation to your son-in-law, Scott Peterson. We need to speak with you about some bank transfers." The world stopped. The words police and bank transfers echoed in my head like funeral bells. And suddenly, all the money I had been sending for 5 years took on a completely different meaning. "Police." My voice came out as a broken whisper. "I don't understand." "What happened to Scott, Mrs. the Massis?" "Sterling, I can't give you details over the phone, but we need you to come to the precinct tomorrow. We are investigating an online scam operation, and your name appears in several bank records as a potential victim." Victim. The word fell on me like a bucket of ice water. For 5 years, I had believed I was helping my family, investing in their future, making sure Audrey had everything she needed. And now, a police officer was telling me I was a victim. "Victim of what?" I asked. though deep down I was starting to understand the terrible reality. A fraud. Mom, your son-in-law has been using the money you were sending to feed an illegal online gambling network. There are no investments. There are no prosperous businesses. It was all a lie. The phone slipped from my hands and fell to the floor with a dry thud. I stood there in the middle of my living room, looking at the walls that suddenly seemed to be closing in on me. Every dollar I had sent, every sacrifice I had made, every meal I had skipped to send more money had all been to feed the vices of a man who didn't even consider me family. I picked up the phone with trembling hands. The detective was still on the line. Mrs. the Messer. Sterling. Are you there? Yes. Yes. I'm here. Tomorrow at 10, 0 inches the morning. The Upper East Side Precinct. Ask for me, Detective Hayes, and bring all the bank statements you have of the transfers. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea that grew cold as I went through all the bank papers again and again. Transfer after transfer, each with a date, an amount, a reason that now sounded ridiculous in light of the truth. To fix the car, for Audrey's school tuition, to invest in cryptocurrencies, to buy stocks in the stock market, for an emergency fund. All lies. All elaborate excuses to keep draining my savings while Scott compulsively gambled on illegal platforms. If this story has touched you, please subscribe and share the video to help me grow better. Your support means everything at 10 sharp. I was at the precinct carrying a plastic bag full of bank documents that represented the evidence of my own stupidity. The detective turned out to be an older man, about 50 years old, with greying temples and an expression that mixed professionalism with genuine compassion. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "I know this must be very difficult for you." "How much money?" I asked directly without mincing words. "How much money have I lost?" The detective consulted a folder full of papers. "According to our calculations, over the last 5 years, you have transferred $520,000 to Scott Peterson's account. Money he used to gamble on illegal online casinos, mainly in high-stakes poker games and sports betting. $520,000, over $500,000. All the assets Charles had worked 30 years to accumulate, plus my widow's pension, plus the small savings I had been putting together for decades, all volatilized in the delusions of grandeur of a gambling addict. And my daughter?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Did Charlotte know anything?" The detective looked at me with an expression that mixed pity and discomfort. "Mrs. Sterling, your daughter is being cited as an accomplice. The transfers went into their joint account, and there is evidence that she knew the actual destination of the money. Text messages between her and her husband coordinating the excuses they would give you to ask for more money. The world collapsed around me. Not only had I been defrauded by Scott, but betrayed by my own daughter. Charlotte had been an active part of the deception. She had invented emergencies and needs while knowing perfectly well that my money was evaporating at virtual poker tables. "Messages," I whispered. The detective showed me printed copies of text conversations the police had recovered from Scott's phone. I read in horror how my daughter and her husband planned each request for money. Tell your mom we need it for the car insurance. I lost $3,000 last night in a bad run. I already asked her last week. She'll be suspicious. Invent something about Audrey's school. Moms always fall for that. Perfect. I'll tell her it's for extra English classes. Every message was a stab. Every conversation I read showed me how my daughter had converted my maternal love into a tool of manipulation. They spoke of me as if I were an idiot. Someone who could be abused indefinitely because I was too foolish or too desperate to maintain family contact. How much have they lost in total? I asked. Though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Scott, Peterson owes approximately $800,000 to different illegal gambling platforms. Your money, plus fraudulent bank loans, plus scams against other relatives and acquaintances. It's a considerable operation. $800,000. My head couldn't process those figures. It was enough money to buy several apartments, to travel the world, to live comfortably for years. And it had all been lost to the addiction of a man who had manipulated my daughter to turn me into his personal source of funding. What is going to happen now? I asked. Scott is already in custody. Charlotte is cooperating with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence. The house in Beverly Hills will be foreclosed to pay part of the debts. And as for you, I'm afraid it is highly improbable that you will recover your money. I left the precinct as if I were walking on the seabed. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. Sounds arrived muffled. Reality had become gelatinous and unreal. On the subway ride back home, I sat among workers and students who had normal problems. Normal lives. Normal families who hadn't betrayed them to the point of utter ruin. Over the following days, New York City continued its usual pace while my world completely disintegrated. News of the case appeared in the local papers. Scam network dismantled, affecting dozens of families in the New York area. Gambling addict scams $500,000 from mother-in-law through elaborate deception. My personal tragedy had become a human interest story that people would read with their morning coffee before completely forgetting it. The phone rang one afternoon while I was trying to eat soup that tasted like cardboard. It was Charlotte. For the first time in weeks. She was calling me. I answered with trembling hands, not knowing what to expect. Mom. Her voice sounded different, smaller, stripped of that arrogance that characterized our last conversations. What do you want? I asked, surprising myself with the coldness of my tone. I need to explain. I need you to understand that I didn't want this to happen. You didn't want to? The laugh that came out was bitter as gall. I have copies of your messages with Scott right here. Charlotte. Tell your mother that. Invent something about school. Moms always fall for that. Are those the words of someone who didn't want this to happen? The silence on the other end of the phone was so long. I thought she had hung up. At first, it was just to get us out of a jam, she finally murmured. Scott promised me he would pay it all back, that they were temporary investments. By the time I realized he had a gambling problem, it was too late. I was afraid to tell you. I was afraid of losing you. Losing me? My voice rose. You were afraid of losing me while you were stealing from me? While you were inventing fake emergencies? While you were telling me I was pathetic when I came to see you. The thing at the house. That was awful. Mom. I was desperate. I knew everything was going to be found out. And you decided to humiliate me one last time before the charade was over. No. No. It wasn't that. I love you, Mom. I always have. But I was trapped in a situation that had gotten out of hand. The words "I love you" sounded hollow, empty, like fake coins that jingle differently when they hit the floor. "Where is Audrey?" I asked. "With his parents in Los Angeles until all this is sorted out. I want to see her." "Mom, now is not the time. Everything is very unsettled. She's confused. She doesn't understand why her father isn't home." "I want to see my granddaughter," I shouted, surprised by the strength that was still left in my voice. She's the only thing I have left of this family of liars. The silence settled between us again, loaded with years of deception, misunderstood love, and trust destroyed beyond repair. "I'll call you in a few days," she finally said. "When things are calmer." She hung up before I could answer. I was left with the phone in my hand, looking at the screen that showed "call ended." As if those two words perfectly summarized what had happened to my family. Call ended. Relationship ended. Life ended. That night, as ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, and New York City continued its nightlife, oblivious to my personal drama, I made a decision that surprised me with its clarity. I was not going to wait for any more calls from Charlotte. I was not going to beg for crumbs of affection anymore. I was not going to be a victim once more of empty promises and emotional manipulation. It was time for Vivian Sterling to learn to live for herself, even if it meant starting over at 68 years old without family, without money, but paradoxically, for the first time in decades, without lies. The following days unfolded in a strange haze of self-imposed silence. I disconnected the landline and put my cell phone on silent mode. For the first time in 5 years, my mornings did not begin with the anxiety of waiting for calls that never came or transfers I had to make. This was a different silence from the one I had experienced during the weeks of Charlotte's rejection. This was a chosen silence. Controlled. Mine. I sat in front of the bedroom mirror, the same one where I had styled my hair every morning for 40 years, and I did not recognize the woman who looked back at me. My hair was neglected, my skin grayish, like someone who had spent too many sleepless nights. And in my eyes there was something I took a while to identify: absolute emptiness. Not sadness, not pain, not anger. Just a void so deep it seemed to have absorbed all the life from my face. Maria from the bank knocked on my door 2 days later. I had seen her through the window, climbing the stairs with that maternal concern developed by people who have worked all their lives dealing with clients who, without realizing it, become part of their daily lives. "Ms. Pollitter?" "Sterling. You didn't come in on Tuesday to make your transfer," she said when I opened the door. "We at the bank were wondering if you were okay." I looked at her for a long moment, registering the irony that a bank employee showed more genuine concern for my well-being than my own family. "There won't be any more transfers." "Maria." I told her with a calm that surprised me. It's over. Her face showed confusion, then comprehension, then something akin to compassion. She was an intelligent woman who had been seeing the money patterns of her clients for decades, and she had probably suspected that something was wrong with my weekly transfers for a long time. "Can I do anything for you?" she asked. "Yes," I replied after thinking for a moment. "Help me close all the accounts I share with my daughter and open a new one where only I have access." That same day, with Maria as the silent witness to my financial emancipation, I severed all the banking ties that connected me to Charlotte. There was very little money left. Barely $3,000 from a pension I had been stretching for months to cover the transfers. But it was mine. For the first time in 5 years, every dollar in my account belonged exclusively to me. Over the following weeks, New York City continued its winter routine, while I learned to avoid my own silence. I would go for walks in Central Park when the timid January sun managed to break through the clouds. And I sat on benches where other people my age fed pigeons or read newspapers. I started observing those older women who seemed so serene, so complete in their solitude, and I wondered if any of them had gone through the same thing as me. One afternoon, while drinking coffee at a diner on Bleecker Street, I heard 2 women at the next table talking about their adult children. One of them was saying, "My son calls me every Sunday without fail. But sometimes I feel like it's more out of obligation than desire. As if he has an alarm on his phone, reminding him, 'Call Mum.'" The other woman nodded knowingly. I preferred to step back before it came to that. I told my kids I no longer expected weekly calls, that when they wanted to talk to me, they knew where to find me. At first, they felt liberated, but then they started calling more because it was no longer an obligation. Her words pierced me like needles. Had I turned my maternal love into such a heavy obligation that Charlotte had to resort to stealing to free herself from it? Had my need to feel needed created the perfect ground for me to be manipulated? That night, I took out all the family photos I had scattered around the apartment. Photos of Charlotte as a baby, Charlotte as a child, Charlotte as a teenager, Charlotte on her wedding day. Photos of Audrey from newborn up to the last one I had managed to see on social media before Charlotte restricted all access. I spread them out on the dining room table as if they were tarot cards that could reveal where everything had started to go wrong. In the oldest photos, Charlotte looked at me with genuine love. In the most recent ones, her smile looked forced. Her eyes avoided the camera. Her body language suggested a rush to end the family moment. There had been signs I had chosen not to see. Clues that my insistence on maintaining closeness had begun to suffocate instead of nurture. The phone rang close to midnight. It was a number I didn't recognize. But after so many days of silence, curiosity outweighed caution. "Grandma Vivian." The voice was small, childlike, laden with a sadness that cut through my chest like a knife. "Audrey," I whispered, barely able to believe my granddaughter was on the other end of the line. "Yes, it's me. I'm at Dad's parents' house in Los Angeles. I found your number on Mom's old phone. Honey, how are you? Are you okay?" The questions tumbled out of my throat. "Grandma, is it true that Dad stole your money?" The question left me breathless. How do you explain the complexity of what had happened to an 8-year-old? How do you protect